he's been very heavily criticised for claiming that Muslims don't share British values in comments that he made during his first interview of the election campaign.
Yes, the Honorary President of Reform UK's remarks have since been labelled horribly Islamophobic by the Secretary-General of the Muslim Council of Britain.
Mr Farage joins us now. Good morning, Mr Farage. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
OK, let's just start with some facts. Just bear with me here a second. We've examined one of the biggest polls that we could find that's been done on this. It was by Ipsos Mori. They analysed a shed load of polls that have been done on British Muslims in recent years, and they found absolutely conclusively that Muslims in the UK, living here in the UK, attach more importance on being British than do the general population. 85% feel that they truly belong to Britain. 55% say that their national identity as British is very important to them, and that compares to 44% of the general population. So I'm bound to ask, what on earth were you talking about there?
All right, should we get some context first? What I said was a growing number of young people do not subscribe to British values. In fact, despise, in many ways, British values. And what I was talking about, and by the way, every one of your viewers would have seen just a few weeks ago the local elections where in parts of our inner cities we saw sectarian politics, people voting purely on religious lines, councillors getting elected in Leeds and Burnley and elsewhere screaming Allahu Akbar, or things like we're coming to get you. Now, that, I think, was very, very disquieting. The most recent polling on this was done by JL Partners, a very reputable company. And this is what it showed, and this is what I'm worried about. It showed that 23% of 18 to 24-year-old young Muslims living in Britain think that jihad is a good thing. Now, that, of course, is not a British value in any way at all, and that's a very, very disturbing trend. It's particularly prevalent amongst the young. We have a problem, and just to say it's Islamophobic or it's this or it's that is to ignore the fact we have a very real problem.
Yes. You also said in the interview, didn't you, that you could take anyone to a particular street or two in Oldham and there would be nobody living on that street who spoke English. Well, again, that's just not true. The Office of National Statistics...
Yeah,
hang on. Just let me finish. The Office of National Statistics say that only 0.7% of people in Oldham don't speak English. That's less than 1 in 100.
OK. So why is Naz Shah, the Labour MP, for Bradford, doing a big message, a big shout-out to her voters yesterday in a foreign language? And I'll quote you from The Guardian, if you like. Helen Pidd was the northern correspondent of The Guardian, and she described in the Oldham by-election a few years back, she said, I walked down the street, not a single person spoke English. Very few could identify Jeremy Corbyn, but all were voting Labour. That was The Guardian, saying there was a whole street in which no one spoke English. Look, we can argue about numbers, we can argue about stats. What I am saying is undoubtedly true, and that is that we have a growing number of young people in our country who not only don't subscribe to our values, they openly support Hamas and other organisations that we prescribe as being terrorists. That is a serious situation, and it's worthy of a proper debate without name-calling.
But it's undoubted that there are those people that have accused you of Islamophobia because of what you said. They've accused you of race-baiting, that this is a cynical effort to whip up division in order to get votes, and you still stand by what you say? No.
The division is there. We see the division with these marches. We see the division with the intolerance towards Jewish people. We see the division in our universities, where a lot of Jewish students have virtually gone into hiding. So unpleasant have things become. That's where the division is. What I am saying is we need to have a debate about this. If we don't sort this out, we're going to have a much bigger problem in the not-too-distant future.
The issue is you're talking about these things without actually coming up with the solutions for them. When you say things like, you know, you claim that Muslims living in the UK don't share British values, how would you...
No, I didn't say that. No, I'm sorry. No. I'm not having this. I am not saying Muslims living in the UK don't share British values.
You said a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, and you then went on to explain that, yes, they were 46...
Well, thank you.
Then you were talking about the British Muslims.
So hang on. I'm talking about a minority, but a growing minority, and predominantly very young people in the British Muslim community are turning their backs on all the values and the tolerances that we believe in.
So my question to you was about British values. What are you summing up as British values when you talk about this?
Well, I don't think excluding women from public life and debate is very British, do you? Very interesting. I mean, we saw Angela Rayner yesterday virtually begging her local Muslim community to vote for her. Not a single woman in the room. Look at the celebrations that we saw after the local election successes for Greens, Independents, etc. in the local elections. You'll find it very difficult to find a single woman there. Look at attitudes towards homosexuality. You know, we are a country that is very relaxed and tolerant about the issue in every way. You find large sections of that community have different views.
Can I just explain why I'm asking this, though? Why I'm asking this? Because there is actually a definition of British values, 5 core British values: democracy, rule of law, individual liberty, mutual respect and tolerance of those with different faiths or beliefs. So, you know, there is an argument to say, isn't there, that you're not actually demonstrating the British values there, are you?
Well,
with mutual respect and tolerance of those with different faiths and beliefs.
I'm sorry. I don't like sectarian politics. I don't like people voting politically purely along religious lines. And the reason is I'm old enough to remember what that did in Northern Ireland and what it led to. And I'm saying these things as a warning, and I promise you I'm not wrong.
So how do you bring people together then? What's your solution to enable to, you know, prevent these divisions from occurring as you're describing them?
Well, the first thing is to recognise why we're in the mess we're in. And the reason that nobody else will talk about this is because both the Labour and Conservative parties have caused the problem. Labour opened the door to mass immigration on a scale this country had never seen. And what the Conservatives did in government was to accelerate that trend. You know, you look at the numbers, 1.2 million new people a year settling in the United Kingdom. The numbers are literally mind-blowing. You cannot have integration. You cannot have societies with different communities working together if you have mass immigration at that level. So number one, recognise the problem, and number two, actually reduce mass immigration and hopefully give us a chance to get those separated out communities integrated.
Well, let's talk about
but as I say, the others don't want to talk about it. The others won't talk about it because they've caused it.
Well, let's talk about immigration. You've challenged the Prime Minister to a television debate, a live TV debate, and obviously he's not going to accept that. I think it's a fairly safe prediction. What would you do to stop the boats? Because that's what you want to debate him about. What would reform do? How would you stop the boats coming over?
Yeah. So I came here 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I went out to sea repeatedly. I started filming the small boats. I predicted there would be an invasion unless we got tough on this issue. And, of course, nobody wanted to talk about it. They called me nasty names. They're very good at doing that. And now, 3,800 boats later, 125,000 people later, we now have Labour saying, we'll solve it, we'll crack down on the criminal gangs. Well, we've been saying that about the drugs gangs for decades, and it hasn't made any difference at all.
You
Labour
can't really call it an invasion. An invasion cons. You see, that's the kind of emotive language which colours this debate. And discolours this debate,
I tell you what, Richard, if you don't think 125,000 people coming in 3,800 boats is an invasion, that's fine. I'd love to see you put it to the whole of your viewers.
I think, look, again, it just comes down to statistics.
I'd love to see Good Morning Britain viewers.
It comes down to the numbers game. Honestly, the number of... I mean, of course we need to stop the small boats coming over for the reasons that you've described. But to call it an invasion is an exaggeration because we know that these numbers coming in the boats are a tiny fraction of the number of people arriving here seeking asylum. It's a tiny fraction.
It's about the same as D-Day, but look, we'll move on from that.
You've
now got the Conservative Party saying...
What's your solution?
Right. Well, Rwanda doesn't work. Rwanda doesn't work. We have a general election going on. This is one of the most emotive issues in the country. People are furious about what is going on. They're furious about these young men, and they're nearly all young men. 86% of the people that come are young men. They're put up in accommodation, given spending money. They even get free dental care.
So what do you intend? What would you do about it, though? Sorry, it's only because we're pressured by time, so we just want to hear what your solution is.
Until we leave the European Court of Human Rights, we will never be able to solve this issue. When that one plane was on the tarmac, ready to fly to Rwanda, it was a judge at 10 p.m. in Strasbourg who stopped it. Leave the European Court of Human Rights and make clear that nobody that comes via this route will ever be granted settled status in our country. And thirdly, say to the French Navy, we will not accept your Navy escorting dinghies to our 12-mile line and then handing them over to our authorities.
How do you enforce that, Mr Farage?
Well, if the French won't play ball, then the Royal Marines will have to take people back to France. It's just as simple as that. The law of the sea says if you see a vessel that you think is in danger, you should do your utmost to save them. The French Navy should not be shepherding them across the line.
So you would send, I'm just want to get this clear in my head, you would send British naval vessels out into the Channel, you would basically disembark people who had left the French coast, put them on board the naval ship, take them into French waters, and put them in some kind of transport boat to get them back on the shore. That's what you do.
That's what the Australians did. That was what Tony Abbott did in Australia 10 years ago. He stopped the boats coming from Indonesia, but it's not the first priority.
What do you think France is going to say about that, though?
The first priority... well, they won't like it, but I don't like their French Navy aiding and abetting criminal traffickers getting people illegally coming to Britain. The key to all of this is to be able to deport people that come illegally. The last Labour government was deporting over 40,000 people a year who came to Britain illegally. In the past, we wouldn't put up with this. Now we do, and that's because of weak leadership of both the Conservative and the Labour parties.
Well, talking about leadership, I heard one commentator this morning describing you as a sort of a bit of a hokey-cokey politician these days. You're sort of in, out, in, out. I mean, last week you made it plain that you wouldn't be standing in this coming election, and here we are this morning talking to you, and you're challenging the Prime Minister to a leaders' debate, as if you are running. Why aren't you running for office?
Well, I made it all very clear last week that I had a 6-month plan. I was going to stand in a general election, but 6 weeks, not long enough. I couldn't find a seat from scratch and go around the country campaigning. And above all, I'm an issues campaigner. Whether it's Europe, whether it's debanking, whether it's this issue, I'm an issues campaigner. I was talking about this before anybody else even thought it was an issue. Okay. You know, in some ways, with the general public, I've gained ownership of a large part of this debate. I know that what's being proposed by both Sunak and Starmer will not work, and that's why I want to have a debate. And I'll debate either of them.
Very briefly, because we're out of time now, and you've got a campaign to launch.
Yeah.
We might see the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, convicted later today or tomorrow in his trial in America. Are you still in his corner?
100%. Absolutely 100%. The world was a much safer place with Donald Trump as president. Weak leadership from Biden's given an open door to Putin, to the Chinese, to the Iranians, or Hamas indeed, all of our aggressors. No, we need Trump back in the White House. We need a strong relationship with him. We need NATO and the rest of the members to pay their way. We will be a much safer place. And, you know, it matters because we're in a worse place than we've been since the Cuban Missile Crisis of over 60 years ago.
Doesn't his character matter?
Yes, it does, and he's bold and he's brave and he's fierce, and this trial has proved absolutely nothing other than that the key witness, his former lawyer, is a convicted liar.
OK, Nigel Farage, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. From Dover.